What do I say at the beginning? Oh yeah, okay.
Hey guys.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be doing a book review for Dorothy Must Die by Danielle Page. First of all, I want to start by saying, obviously, as we just saw, I have this cover, which is just the classic Dorothy Must Die cover. It is a paperback, as you can tell. I actually love the new Epic Reads edition of the covers, but that one was at a thrift store, so I couldn't really beat that price, so I just went with that one. And let me tell you, I did not regret it, so let's just jump right in. So as usual, I'm going to do the first part as a non-spoiler, so I'm just kind of going to give a vague example of what the book is like and talk about some of the characters I enjoyed, my rating, some similar books, which is a new edition, so comment down below and let me guys know if you like that. I'll let you know when it's happening. And then after that, and I will tell you when, you need to click off, and Janelle has a really cool spoiler zone, so that will be when the spoiler zone starts, and then I will go in to describe the full plot and what happens and my thoughts on it. Okay, so the first thing that I will say about this book, I felt like I had to read it. It's a reader's rite of passage. When I was telling people this was my first time reading through it, people that know me and know how much I love reading, I love books, they were absolutely shocked because a lot of people end up reading this in middle school, or some people even in elementary, lower high school, that kind of thing, and now I'm in first year university reading it for the first time. It was always one that I wanted to read. If I was looking around the class during like silent reading time or whatever, I'd see a lot of people reading it, so as a reader that always interested me, but I just never really got around to it, so I was really excited that I finally finished this book. So I'm just gonna give you kind of a quick plot. So it's about a girl named Amy Gum. She lives in Kansas, and she lives in a trailer park with her mom, and she's very much like an alternative character. Like, she's got a full head of pink hair, she's very sassy, that kind of thing. So I will just start right off the bat by saying I did really enjoy her as a character. She gets picked up in a tornado, of course, classic Oz story, in the trailer actually. So the whole like trailer gets picked up in the tornado and she lands in Oz. She lands in a much darker version of Oz though. That's kind of what this whole book is about. It's almost like a darker retelling, and it's also the future of Oz. It's not exactly a retelling in that way. It's more like what happened after the story that we all know. And it's a modern day version. Obviously, not much about Oz is like modern, but you know what I mean. Trying to keep this as spoiler-free as possible, I'm going to talk about Amy, Dorothy, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Lion, and that's it. Because those are the people that obviously you would assume are in a story about Oz. So first of all, about Amy, I really liked her. She was sarcastic, she was witty, she had a very strong personality, and like I said, she was very alternative, and so I just thought that that was interesting for such a happy story, I would call it. So Dorothy, I have written down, obviously not the best. If Dorothy must die, she's probably like not the best person. I really enjoyed the description of Dorothy, actually. It's the thing that when I was telling everybody about this book as I was reading it, I would always talk about Dorothy's description because I thought it was so cool. Basically, it's like she's still got the classic, I think it's pronounced like gingham, is like blue and white plaid pattern, but it's almost like stripper clothing. It's like lots of cleavage, lots of leg, like that kind of thing. And she's got many different dresses and styles of outfits and pantsuits and stuff, but all of them are in that same pattern. And then of course, her classic red shoes, except this time they're like big red stiletto heels. Like, just, it really made her, it painted the picture of her being evil. Okay, so then after that, we have the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion. I will say that they're all very similar before I kind of dive in deeper. They're all similar in the way that they're all darker versions of the tale that we all know. They're all kind of like versions from hell. I've found the book kind of takes on what Dorothy gave them in the original tale and makes it a bad thing. So for example, the Lion's courage. The Lion is now like this big evil monster, basically like this huge guy, and he feeds on people's fear of him. So he's just getting more powerful, and he's essentially draining people of who they are because he's taking their fear out. Next we have the Scarecrow. The Scarecrow, from what I could tell, was described pretty much how he looked in the movie, but scary man. he is experimenting on like people and animals in his labs. And one of the things that he's doing is actually like, I don't know what it is, but he's like taking other people's brains, or he's like taking the juice out of their brains or something and like injecting it into his own brain because he wants to have the best brain in all of Oz. So those are the only kind of thing that like, it seems like it could happen. And it's a little bit similar to what happened to Dorothy, but I will get to that after. Finally, we have the Tin Man, and he is basically making people into like part human, part robot. I think that that's what a cyborg is. I think that's the definition of a cyborg. He's essentially like torturing people and making them into machines and armies, and it's scary stuff. Something that I loved about this book a lot was actually the reason that Dorothy became evil, basically. And it's essentially, I think, very realistic of a possibility considering that this is a fantasy tale. At the end of the story, we all know Dorothy goes back home to Kansas, and when she gets there, she's obviously very ordinary again. She's not this big princess, this big hero that everybody admires, and she doesn't like feeling ordinary after being so heavily privileged and so many people loved her in Oz. So then she goes back to Oz because she wants to feel that love again and feel that special. And then it eventually just like basically takes over her brain, and that's all that she wants is more power and more magic. So basically she's taking advantage of all of the people who love her. I also really enjoyed the author's descriptive style of writing. There were many things that I could picture well, and I mean partially that would be because I grew up loving The Wizard of Oz, but I honestly, I will give Danielle Page the credit and say that she did a very good job describing things. There were some things that were very disturbing, which made me wonder how people could read this in elementary school like I saw. It was a lot more middle school, which good because there's some scary parts in this. I gave this book a rating of 4 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed reading it, and I would recommend it to people. I don't know that I would necessarily read it again, just because I'm not really a rereader of certain books, but I just thought that maybe I was a little bit too old to read it. That was the only ding that I had against it, which I know that I was just saying how disturbing certain scenes were, but at this point I'm kind of starting to move into more adult books. Don't worry, I'm still obsessed with young adult, but I'm starting to read some Stephen King and just things that are meant for a little bit more mature and older audiences. So reading this felt a little bit like taking a step backwards. That's kind of the only ding that I had against it. But it's definitely still worth checking out. It's a really good book. I would still recommend it. And I actually just went and bought the second one yesterday. Also, just a little channel update. So what I've decided to do is there's certain series that I had started before I started this channel. So rather than go back and try to remember all the things about those books, I'm going to try to do a whole series review. So that's the only thing, is that currently I'm reading the last books in certain series, and I just need to finish those so that I can review those. It's kind of complicated, but basically if I just read the first book now, then I will review it now, and then the other books will come later. But if it's series that I'm finishing that I didn't start reviewing on this channel, then I will just do a whole series review to kind of sum up what happened. Okay, so this is the new edition part that I was talking about. I wanted to make the reviews more interesting for you guys as I was watching them back and editing them, because that's a new thing. I kind of edit a little bit now, it's like whatever. As I was editing them, I started to realize it's just a lot of me explaining what happened and not exactly my thoughts on it. So I didn't know if that would be as interesting. So one of the new things that I've decided to add, mentioning similar books to this one. Things that if you like this book, you may also like, kind of thing. So obviously this book is a very unique topic, so I kind of found it hard to think of a similar book, but what I came up with was Splintered by A.G. Howard. It is one of my favorite books ever. It's a little bit similar where it's like a dark retelling of Alice in Wonderland. It's a little bit more fantasy than I normally read, but I really liked it, so I think that you guys should check that out. And it's a little bit more of a mature read. Alice in Wonderland is definitely one of my like top favorite stories ever, so that shouldn't be a surprise. So I think that that's all for my non-spoiler section. So please, 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 if you think that this book is for you, if you've heard about it and always wanted to read it, I would say go ahead and read it. There's nothing holding you back. Go right ahead. It is worth a read for sure, especially even if you don't plan to read the other books. If you grew up watching Wizard of Oz, if you know the tale and you think that the concept sounds interesting, for sure go ahead and read it. But now I'm going to move into the spoiler section. So if you have read it or you don't think you want to read it but you're interested to hear what happens, stay tuned for the next part, and otherwise, I'll see you guys next time.
Spoilers.
So, we are now in the spoiler section. So I'm gonna start by explaining some of the characters and my feelings on them, which makes more sense to me than going into the plot and having not explained the characters like I did for the And the Trees Crept In review. I just wasn't as prepared for that one. I'm kind of prepared this time. It's like, whatever. One of the first characters that we meet, they're not necessarily in order, and I didn't include all of them, but one of the first characters we meet, his name is Pete, and basically when the trailer that Amy is in touches down in Kansas, it's about to fall into this big like hole in the ground, and he helps her out. He's very confusing, very odd. He speaks in almost like metaphors. She gets very frustrated with that throughout the book. He kind of just pops in and out. I don't really have a whole lot to say. He wasn't a huge character. The other character is Knox. All I can say is he's very hot. If you know me, you know that I love Jace, Wayland, spoiler alert, Herondale, whatever you want to call his last name, from the City of Bones. Love him. And I found that they were very similar. They were sassy and tough and whatever, tough guy exterior, that kind of thing. I don't have much else to say besides that. If you like Jace, Wayland, Herondale, you will like. The next person I want to talk about is Glinda. So if you ever saw the original Oz, Glinda with one of the pink dress, she's like Glinda the good witch, whatever. Again, this is the kind of book where everything that's good is wicked and everything that's wicked is good. So she is like scary, like really scary, and I think I used this name in another thing. I'm not obsessed with this, I swear, but she reminds me of like Momo, like that internet sensation, the meme. Not gonna put a picture of it up because I had nightmares about it. I wish I was kidding. Just the way they were talking about the way that she was smiling and the things that she was doing, which I will get to, just, she's scary. The next person that was kind of a newer character, same as Pete and Knox, was Ozma. So she's considered the Princess of Oz. And she, I believe, was supposed to be the rightful ruler of Oz before Dorothy came back. Now her brain is like mush. So now Dorothy's taken over and Ozma's still alive, but she's just kind of like in her own mind and trapped in her own mental state, I would say. And the last character that I will talk about is the Wizard, as in the Wizard of Oz, as in the person at the end of the movie who gives the Lion, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow all the things they are desiring. The thing that I will say about the Wizard is he just kind of like creeped me out. He was like an old creepy man. I pictured him looking like the guy, the evil guy from the second Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball movie, and I don't know if that's just because Janelle and I watched that recently, but I pictured him looking like that with like a pointy hat, so I don't know. Basically, the story starts out with Amy's backstory, so it shows her in her high school, and she gets into a fight with this like really prissy popular girl, which at first I thought was kind of like random. I was excited to get to the part where she's actually in Oz, but I found that was really important to shape her character and show that she really hates like prissy bullies, which is exactly what Dorothy is, so it really translated well over to the Oz story, so that was a good move on the author's part, even though I didn't see it right away. So there's a big tornado warning. Her mom is really not a good mother. She basically talks about how she's been growing up taking care of her. She's addicted to drugs, alcohol, and her mom leaves her in the trailer park to go and spend some time with her friends. They're having like a tornado watch party or something like that, and almost nobody else is in the trailer park. And so she's in the trailer and she gets picked up by the tornado, and like I said, dropped in Oz. She wakes up with Pete leaning in with his hand, and he helps her out, and she just kind of begins to realize where she is, and of course she doesn't believe it right away, because who would? She decides to just start walking. Basically, she's got nowhere to go. And as she's heading there, she sees people along the way. She meets a goth munchkin, and that was kind of like the tip-off that this is in fact a darker version of Oz. And I'm talking like blue hair, lots of eyeliner, tattoos, swears. Like I can't repeat the words on here, but yeah. Anyways, she also meets a monkey, a wingless monkey. He cut off his wings and he's tied upside down to a tree, and it's for like attitude adjustment or something. So basically he was sassy to Dorothy and she tied him upside down. And that's kind of something that is talked a little bit about in this book, is Dorothy has control over the monkeys that have their wings still, because she controls most of the magic in Oz, which is kind of the whole point of the story. So he cut off his wings basically to rebel and to not be held captive, kind of thing. One of the last and final things that she sees before she gets to the Emerald City is Glinda, and she's really excited because she says she grew up watching this movie with her mom and Glinda was her favorite, and then she sees that Glinda is scary. So basically what she comes across is almost a mining mill of munchkins taking all of the magic out of the ground of Oz. So I didn't want to say this in the non-spoiler part just in case, but that's basically the whole point, is that Dorothy gets like power sick and she wants all of the magic in Oz. She needs to have it all. It's a little bit like the Scarecrow needing his brain to be the best. All of the magic she is draining out of the ground, and that's what the munchkins are doing. And obviously if you go against her, you get killed, basically. So Glinda is there and she's kind of controlling everything and making sure that the munchkins actually do their job and get the magic drilled out of the ground. As they're on their way there, they run into a hologram of Ozma, the Princess of Oz, which I talked about earlier. That's kind of the first hint that you get that's the first time that you see her, and that's the first time that you hear her story about how she was probably supposed to be the rightful ruler, and then Dorothy kind of took over. Eventually they reach the castle, the Emerald City, and they actually get taken prisoner by the Tin Woodman, and she's still with the Goth Munchkin, and the Goth Munchkin ends up dying, although I'm very suspicious that she's not actually dead, but she didn't come back in this book, so maybe she is. And Ollie like takes off and runs away on her, basically. So Amy gets taken to Dorothy and they have a standoff, basically, and at first I think that everything's fine and that it's gonna be great, and Amy's doing a very good job of being nice to Dorothy and trying to pretend like, you know, she's really not like the sassy person that she is. But Dorothy feels very vulnerable and attacked when she sees Amy, and she feels very threatened, and they do explain it in a good way. Basically, it was like the reason that she's looked at so magically is because she was picked up from this other place and dropped down and became their ruler. So obviously when she sees somebody else, that means that A, either she's really not that special, or B, maybe then Amy would take her place on the throne. And obviously, as we've heard, she would not like that. So she sentences Amy to death and she sends her down into the dungeon. Pete ends up showing up again, the guy from the beginning, and he says that he's gonna help her get out, and he sends a witch, and so then the witch ends up getting her out, and they go back to this place called the Order of the Wicked. And so that's kind of the baseline of the story, is this rebellious group. And it's basically a bunch of witches and Nox, like I mentioned earlier, and they're all trying to rebel against Dorothy, and they have this idea that Amy will be able to kill Dorothy, hence the title, Dorothy Must Die. They want Oz back to its former glory, and the only way to do that is to kill its current leader. They think that Amy will be able to succeed with that because she's from this other place, Kansas, the same that Dorothy was from, and they think, oh, you'll think like her, you guys have similar brains, that kind of idea. Obviously, Amy's pretty against it at first, but I would say as the story goes along, she begins to hate Dorothy more and more, and that's kind of more incentive to actually kill Dorothy. So she starts training with Nox to become the person who kills Dorothy. There ends up being a big battle in a town nearby, and the lion is killing people, and they go and try to stop him, and they do get pretty far, but they end up losing one of their own witches, and so then they kind of retreat back home, and it moves up their timeline a bunch. And so now basically Amy's just thrown into it. They kidnapped a maid from the castle, and they did a cloaking spell on Amy that kind of turned her into this maid whose name is Astrid. And so then she goes like undercover into the castle as Astrid, basically. And so then that's where the rest of the story pretty much is. And that is something that I'll say, the only thing that I didn't like about the plotline of this book is how long it took to get to the Emerald City. It may not actually be that long in terms of pages, as it took me a lot longer to read the first part as it did the Emerald City part, and that's kind of what I mean, is I found the Emerald City part very interesting and pretty fast-paced. A lot of it was interesting to me. the first part when she's in the caves and she's with the Order of the Wicked. I didn't find that as intriguing to keep reading. So obviously Amy's first question is like, when will I know how to do it? What should I be doing and whatever? And the Order assures her, you have a handler in the castle. There's somebody who you won't know who it is, but they're working with us and they will protect you and they will let you know when it's time, that sort of thing. So she spends a little while getting adjusted to the castle. She learns where things are. She occasionally sees the Pete guy that I was talking about earlier. Again, he just kind of pops in and out of the story. He doesn't give her a whole lot to work off of, like I said, very metaphorical, but that all becomes clear as I will explain. So like I talked about at the beginning, there's Ollie, the wingless monkey, and he comes along again, he's in the castle, and he's trying to save his sister. So his sister was taken prisoner. She didn't cut off her wings. So at that point, she's basically indebted to Dorothy, and the Scarecrow has actually taken her and is experimenting on her in the lab. So Amy says that she will try to save her, and she does end up saving Ollie's sister. That's just kind of a little thing that happens, but it becomes more important as we go on. So one of the other major things that happens is she accidentally bumps into the wizard. She's kind of poking around, sneaking, doing things that she shouldn't be, and the wizard kind of appears behind her, and he starts speaking and saying these random things that she kind of starts to get the hint that he doesn't like Dorothy a whole lot and that he may be an ally, but obviously she can't ask him that because she's undercover. She accidentally ends up framing one of the maids and like one of her only friends there for getting Ollie's sister out of the Scarecrow's lab. The other maid actually takes the fall for it and says like, I plead guilty or whatever. And she's going, why is she doing that? And then she realizes that that was her handler in the castle. So now she's basically just framed her only help. And so her handler ends up dying, like Dorothy kills her, which I'm gonna get to later because I wanna talk about that. Probably one of the biggest scenes in the book. There's a big party near the end, and that was the time when she's supposed to kill Dorothy, is during this party. That was always the plan. Nox shows up before this party and kind of reveals that, yes, the maid that died was in fact her handler, and that the plan for this party is that a lot of the witches, or like the people from the Order of the Wicked, are going to be around the Emerald City, and they're going to work together to kind of like shut down the magic almost, and so then Dorothy won't be able to access any of her magic, so she'll be much more vulnerable, and that's kind of the plan of how then Amy is going to kill her. So during this party, there's some things that go wrong. Dorothy's dress ends up being cut and she gets like obviously really angry, so Amy takes that as a sign and she leads Dorothy upstairs to go get her a new dress, and she takes out a knife to go kill her. And Dorothy's dog is in fact also in this story, and he is like the most evil little dog. Like most of the story he's kept in a little like circle, a magic circle on the floor that he can't get out of because he's just so evil. But now there's no magic, so when she goes to kill Dorothy, Toto is out of his little circle and he like jumps on her and he's biting her, and so that automatically obviously tips off Dorothy that Amy's trying to kill her. So Dorothy runs out of the room screaming, Amy's following her, they go up really high, and the Tin Man appears. He's obviously like, he's like the leader of the guards because he has all this army of people that are like half robotic, and he goes to kill Amy, and Amy tackles Dorothy basically, and they fall over, and so now they're both heading towards the ground and they're gonna die. Amy was warned that the magic could only be held off for so long, so as they're falling to the ground, and I mean like Harry Potter like Voldemort style, you know what I mean? Like they're both holding each other, they're falling to the ground. And it's like at least they're both gonna die, and at least she will have done her job and Dorothy's gonna die. The magic comes back as they are hurtling towards the ground and Dorothy disappears. So she basically uses her magic, gets herself out of the situation, and now it's just Amy falling to the ground, going to die. So that's perfect, right? However, Ollie and his sister come at the last minute and they swoop in and save her. They have made wings, their own wings, I think instead of like newspapers and stuff. So now they still can fly, they're just not held liable for Dorothy. So it was a pretty good exchange. They fly her away, they drop her down, and the wizard's there with Pete. And so you're like, finally, we're gonna get some answers here. And it is confirmed that the wizard is not an ally of Dorothy. The Tin Man shows up. He was like sent there by Glinda. Amy realizes that in order to kill Dorothy, she needs to take back everything else. So first she starts with the Tin Man's heart, and she cuts open his chest and takes out his heart. At that point then, Glinda shows up, and I was gonna describe her specifically, but instead I'm going to say, if you watch my review on And the Trees Crept In, she's like the aunt when you realize that the aunt is crazy, with like the crazy eyes and the lipstick everywhere, like that kind of thing. That's how they describe Glinda when she touches down. She is trying to get Amy to hand over the Tin Man's heart to her, and the wizard says, "Go, I'll hold Glinda off." And here's the biggest plot twist of the book. Pete turns into Ozma. So I still don't really understand. I don't know if Ozma, like the princess, I don't know if she's been a hologram this whole time or what, or if she's just been pretending, but basically Pete is the princess. And so he kind of like shapeshifts or transforms into Ozma. And it seems like maybe he's of sound mind. I don't know yet, because the book ended before you can really tell. And so she grabs Ozma, and then Ollie and his sister pick her up and they fly her away, and that is how the book ends. So obviously I had to go out and get the second one immediately. I will say, obviously it was a very shocking ending. It was also very quick paced, I would say. Like, I feel like the book was very slow moving. What's it called? Like slow burn. But the ending was very like, oh, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and it didn't really give me a lot of time to process it. And when I went back to write down my thoughts for this review, I actually had to pretty much reread the whole ending, because I was like, so many things happened that I don't know who came in what order and what went down. So the only other thing that I want to talk about is, like I said, I would get back to it, the maid dying. That is one of the most disturbing scenes in this book, is during the party. You're not sure yet if the maid has actually been killed. She gets her arm cut off, but then the Tin Man takes her away and says that he's gonna do all these experiments on her and whatever. And so then Amy's hoping she can kill Dorothy and then save the maid in time. And during the big party that they have, and Dorothy's there, and like when everything goes down, basically, Dorothy, when she's talking to everybody, the maid comes in, but she's like a corpse. So she's like a waitress, she's holding a tray, but she's got no eyes, and she's like half robotic, and it's like, oh, and you know, she just happened to die in the process, but here she is, and she's just walking around like with her mouth open with no eyes, like just like stumbling around the party like a zombie. And that really creeped me out, and that was one of the parts that I was like, I can't believe people read this like in grade 7. I mean, I probably could have handled it. I might not be giving myself enough credit, but still, when I was reading that, I was like, whoa, disturbing. Those are pretty much my final thoughts on the book. I know that it's still a lot of me explaining the plot, but so many things happened. I felt like I tried to leave things out, but then when it came to the ending, a lot of things wrapped up or made sense then, so I felt like I had to include it all. So I'm sorry if this was long and boring, but thank you for sticking around if you still did. Like I said, I would give this book 4 out of 5 stars. It was really good. It was a good tale. It was a cool way to see a possibility of what could have happened after the classic Wizard of Oz tale ended. It was cool to see what could have happened after. And yeah, I think that that's all that I have for this one. If you have any suggestions on things that you would like to hear in my book reviews, including like specific things about this book in which I can comment back to you, or I can address it in the next video, or just things that you would like to have as a whole entire section, things you would like me to add, let me know down in the comments, please, please, please. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on how I can improve or what you do like about these. And I think that that's all for this review. I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys. It's all good. Back up.
You said you were too young to read it? Did you mean old? Okay, like you already explained it. Just say you're too old.
I feel so stupid. Okay.
You're good.
Whatever. No, I don't want to say that. Stupid, stupid, stupid.